Second big round for Meta in the last 6 months. So I think what we're really hearing from most of our sources is just that the morale is hitting a low point at the company, and workers have had a lot of anxiety about what might come next. And of course, Meta is saying that it is still working to continue to restructure the company, including by flattening the organization. They want to make sure that managers aren't having just a couple direct reports. They want to make sure that engineers to managers ratio is a little healthier in Zuckerberg's eyes, and giving them more ability to release products faster, to be more efficient. They think that reducing the number of middle managers would really help them get there. But this is really about Zuckerberg's year of efficiency. He's all about efficiency. That is what is driving the stock, and Wall Street seems to like it.
They do still seem to like it, even though many of those working at the company still don't know whether they'll be keeping their jobs by April. If you're on the tech groups, it's going to be, if you're more on the business line, not finding out till May. From a morale perspective, therefore, moving more.
I think that going all in on AI is his next move here, and really relates also to the business. I mean, they have to use AI to improve their algorithm. They have to use AI to make up for the deficiencies in their advertising work because of the changes that Apple made to tracking.
Shares up more than 6%, biggest jump in around 6 weeks, Sarah. As you and I have reported, by contrast, morale is pretty much rock bottom with inside Meta. Remind us why this is happening now. We had some reporting about the urgency to get these job cuts done, about Mark Zuckerberg in particular and what he's about to do.
Well, he wants to make sure that they can meet some lower expense goals. They really want to make sure that they can be a more efficient organization as revenue growth slows. Now, the context here is that these platforms that they've created, Facebook, Instagram, these giants, are really not growing as fast as they used to. They're trying to grow the attention, but the user base is already very saturated around the world. So they have to come up with other ways to get their profits in line with what Wall Street expects, to keep that growth going. And this is how they're doing it. And I think that Meta really saw an opportunity. It's not that they have to, or else there will be some dire consequences for their business, but they saw an opportunity in this moment where a lot of companies are doing this to say, listen, we can do it and it won't reflect badly on us, and in fact, it'll make us look smart.
People downtown means a lot less money being spent there every day. There's less demand for all the buildings and buses, shops, restaurants, and services that downtowns are built around and can't survive without. Companies, politicians, urban planners are now taking a hard look at how their cities can change to adapt to a new reality.
When we began this reporting project, we wanted to be able to answer the question of what was the economic impact of remote work in Manhattan, right? And we wanted to be able to show in more tangible, concrete ways how the daily rhythm of life had changed across the city. We know that ridership is down. We know that people are not badging into the office nearly as often as pre-pandemic. You go downtown, it's not nearly as vibrant, as it once was. But what does it really feel like on a Monday in Manhattan versus a Thursday? And does it really matter? Our reporting and analysis showed that worker spending has reduced by at least $12.4 billion a year in Manhattan alone due to remote work.
Down in your story, you write that to get that number, you asked for help from a professor. His name is Jose Maria Barrero, and he is at Mexico's Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo. And he's also part of Stanford University's Work from Home research group. So How does he calculate this?
In 2020, Barrero and his colleagues had asked in their survey, as part of their work from home research, what workers had estimated they were spending on a weekly basis on meals, shopping, and entertainment near the workplace a year prior. So this research really was closest to get a sense of what were people spending pre-pandemic. Using that number, he was able to show how much less workers were spending by adjusting for a 30% reduction in return to office. That ends up translating to about $4,661 per person per year in Manhattan. They calculated similar analysis in other major cities, including San Francisco, which was just over $3,000 a year per worker that was being lost due to remote work, and in a city like Chicago, just a little over $2,300.
So we came up with this number for New York. But what's cool about, what Jose has done and his colleagues at WFH Research Group is that they also came up with all these estimates for how much in-person work has been reduced in all these other cities in the United States. And they came up with spending calculations, per person per week reductions in spending for all these different places. So I was really interested to see this list because at the top of it is actually, it's not New York, it's Washington, D.C., interestingly, with a 37% reduction in in-person days.
We're seeing this happening all over the country where cities are taking big hits because people aren't coming downtown as much.
Yeah, and we're seeing it all over the world, in fact. But, their data was pretty U.S. specific. So we also have the spending reduction. Even though New York is only sort of number 5 in terms of reduction in in-person days, it's number 1 in terms of spending because New York's expensive. So New York is at the top of the list with a reduction of $4,661 per person per year. LA is $4,200. DC is closer to about $4,000. Atlanta is $3,900, and so on.
So the big question now is, what are cities actually doing about it? You have businesses affected, mass transit, you have lots of office buildings that are standing empty or underused part of the week. How has this affected cities, and why is it so important to cities?
Cities really care about this because, for one thing, they use, tax revenue from consumer spending to fund the city. They also care about it because another big form of revenue for cities is income taxes. And if I don't have to live in New York City because I only have to be in the office one time a week and I can, take the hit of a 2-hour commute from some other state, maybe I'm going to move away. And in a city that's as expensive and difficult to live in as New York, and many cities are expensive and difficult to live in, that is a big existential risk. What is the point of living in New York City if you don't really have to live there and you're paying a big price?
Yeah, so I think for city officials, the big shift to work from home has really increased the sensitivity of the local tax base. So residents in New York are going to be a lot more attuned to the quality of local governance, the quality of local public goods that are being provided to the people that live and work here. So the stakes are really high. So if you have a city that gets it right either by virtue of a great functioning political system or is just endowed with the kinds of amenities that people value, like here in Manhattan, those cities might be well positioned to benefit from work from home. But for the cities that don't get it right, due to a number of factors, whether they're economic or political reasons, some researchers worry that they may face a potential doom loop.
Tracy, if employees won't come back 5 days a week, and it seems like in a lot of businesses where physical presence isn't required, that seems to be the new way of doing things, how are cities going to have to adapt? We have a lot of office buildings, which will no longer be needed. You have a lot of businesses that can't make as much money. So I guess what we're looking at down the road are cities changing, as they always do. What sort of changes do you see?
So a trend that was going on before the pandemic that has certainly been accelerated is that employers are consuming fewer square feet of office space per worker. That's been declining in the top 10 U.S. office markets for over a decade, and it's going to hit new lows now. And it's going to hit more markets. This is going to be everywhere in the U.S., not just in the biggest office markets. So the question there is, how low is it going to get? Because if your employees are in the office 3 days a week, you still need an office. The question is like, how much obsolete office space is there? And that depends on how much employers can reduce their footprints. Relatively few employers are taking those footprints to zero and going fully remote. So the question is, what does the in-person component of a hybrid workplace look like? How much space does it take? And then of the remaining space, how much is now obsolete because it doesn't match these new demands for what offices have to be like? And how much of it can be adapted?
How hard will it be for cities to begin to adapt to this new reality?
So Wes, what is holding up downtowns from adapting is that 90% of the built environment is controlled by the private sector, individuals or companies who make their own decisions about their own assets. But what about this 90% of the built environment that's controlled by the private sector? Figuring out how to incentivize the owners of these assets that are located at the heart of our cities, that is the big question right now of how to motivate these players to think differently about how they use their assets and put them to work. If we make adapting buildings really hard to do, people just won't do it and they'll just walk away. Like, there's always another option.